And we are live again.
Woo! Happy Monday.
Happy Monday. Two psychiatrists in the microphone or two microphones. Hello, everyone who's joining us watching this later. I'm Dr. Balanli Akinrambi, psychiatrist and founder of Bright Minds MD in New Jersey, joined here by my friend and child and
Yes.
adult psychiatrist.
Hi, I'm Dr. Zainab Al-Daher, and I'm double boarded in child and adult, and I'm out here on the West Coast, California. So we got you covered from one side of the country to the other. And
Great.
trained with Bola. We're longtime friends. We've known each other 15 years, and we learned how to be psychiatrists together in New York. So awesome to be here.
Coast to coast. Thank you. So what do we got? What do we have today? Again, we've been getting inquiries and there's been a lot of chatter about the gentle parenting trend versus FAFO, apparently, is what's being talked about today. And, question is, I feel very confused and need you to break it down for me. What is that? What do I avoid? Am I screwing up my kids? Again, gentle parenting versus FAFO. Let's jump right in.
Yeah. So lots and lots of online stuff. I mean, and I love that online communities embraced all things mental health and lots of things now for parents and lots of I think accounts that are very validating to parents. It's not anymore this okay, this is the one way to do it, but you do kind of, things are very much there's acronyms and then there's these trends or there's kind of rebranding of things we've always done, but there's these terms now that are being thrown around that people don't understand. And they're like, oh my God, am I doing that? Am I not doing that? Should I do more of this? Should I do less of that? I get this all the time, for the parents I treat, for, the kids, the parents of the kids I treat. So let's just dive in. We're going to go kind of spectrum to spectrum or pendulum to pendulum because things do tend to kind of swing in either direction. So we'll start with permissive parenting. Okay. Well,
so
actually,
I'm sorry, may I interject? I think we should talk about the classical way of thinking about this before we jump into this modern stuff. Because the gentle parenting, the thoughtful parenting, that's all new agey stuff. You're not going to find that in any textbook, but we have classic ways of looking at parenting styles. So I want to say we should do the classic ways first, the permissive, authoritative, and then see where the new age, the new definitions, new language, gentle and thoughtful fit in. Okay.
Yeah, sounds good. So we'll start with permissive, so gentle kind of gets confused with this. They're not the same thing, but they're sort of, in a way they're kind of overlapping. But permissive parenting is really low demand, but very responsive. So a lot of emphasis on warmth, loving, but at times kind of lacking with setting rules and boundaries. There's kind of a concern in this style permissive to be kind of more like a friend rather than an authority figure, which can be problematic or confusing to the child, especially, young child. So the literature, and again, this is evidence-based, looking at the literature and the outcomes. The upshot is using this approach might put your kid at chance for having struggle with self-control or having kind of low expectations, or once they're out in the world, once they're released in the wild, being unaccustomed to limits. So that's permissive. On the other side too, I do want to just quick note, there's kind of one where we consider it to be not ever something we recommend, but we do want to touch on because that end of the spectrum, uninvolved or neglectful, so we never want to be that where we're just no, there's no responsiveness and there's no demand. So there's just no involvement. And this gets into maybe challenges the family's facing, but that's sort of extreme, and we never want to be on any extreme. But we go to the other kind of end, which is authoritarian, which this is sort of what FAFO is all about. So it's just kind of saying the same thing, but it's catchy, it'll get the clicks, and so it'll get the eyeballs. But high demand, low responsiveness. So there's like lots of high expectations and strict rules, but very minimal like warmth, emotional support. So sort of what you think of old school or like,
parenting.
yeah, like the way I grew up, maybe kind of like in the 60s or 70s, you know, or you know what I mean? Like, so
you do what
as
I
I
say. These are
say.
your expectations.
Say,
Or
yeah,
there'll
kids
be
are to be
consequences.
seen and not heard. Like, I don't care. You're kind of a reflection of my achievements in that. You just have to do these things. And I'm not really interested or curious about what's going on in your own experience as a child. Like, if you're struggling or whatever, we're not really like focusing. We're focusing on kind of like the outcomes, you know, like how well we're performing on the field and school and whatever. And like, not really kind of giving space to what's going on inside the child, feelings, emotions, connecting, you know, so that's authoritarian. Research shows not great outcomes with that, you know, and then the outcomes, and again, the outcomes are like, you know, connected long-term relationships, you know, things relating to just, you know, general, you know, function in the world. They might kind of look like they're successful, but then they might have really a lot of trouble with interpersonal relationships and things like that. So
with self-esteem, relationships, connecting with others. They struggle with that because that wasn't really nurtured in the authoritarian style. It was just,
right.
This is your expectation, this is your outcome, end of it.
Right. And I think in those cases, sometimes it's harder for those kids or that brought up that way to then be curious about other people's inner workings and to kind of, if they didn't have empathy and, you know, compassion kind of demonstrated to them, then they're going to have a hard time because they didn't have that blueprint to then show it to their future partners or their friends, etc. So yeah, and so then in the middle, kind of the Goldilocks is where we want to be. We don't want to be on either extreme, but just right, not too cold, not too hot. Authoritative. So this is the most similar, but not exactly the same as gentle parenting. Okay, but it's the most similar. So it's in the middle. So authoritative, which is like shown to be linked with the best outcomes, you know, for kids, is like there's a sweet spot of like demand, like a high to moderate demand, but high responsiveness together. So there's clear rules and expectations, but also warm and support and a lot of emphasis on like the quality of the relationship, the connectedness, the, you know, you being tuned into your kid, you caring about what's going on in your kid's mind, et cetera, et cetera. But it's very clear that you're not their friend. It's very clear that you're the parent and there are rules and there are boundaries and these things are not okay. And there's, you know, I think at times too, you know, consequences. So we do this, we know that when we do this, this is what happens. We know if we don't do that, this is what happens. So it's kind of the, you know, the melding of both worlds, you know. It's showing open communication. We're very much guiding. So it's a lot of like, we're teaching you how to behave, you know, and what's okay and what's not okay. But we're also very, like, we're not, if you're upset or if you're having a hard time, we're exploring that. We're giving space to that too. Okay. So there is the warmth, there is the interest, there is the empathy, compassion, all of that good stuff. And
so that's 3. And just to recap for anyone who's listening, and just to also make sure I'm listening, we talk about the classical way of thinking about parenting styles. We talk about on one end of the spectrum, the one we never ever recommend is the neglectful parenting.
Yeah.
Where like kids are just on their own figuring things out. No one's responsive to them. No rules, no boundaries, nothing. Just kids are just raising themselves.
It's free for all. Yeah.
And we never recommend that. That's not good. No bueno. And then we talk about 3 other styles. That is a range. And on one end of that spectrum, right after the neglectful style would be the permissive parenting. Again, minimal boundaries, minimal demands, high responsiveness, just very heavy on the responsive, right? Right in between, where we really recommend and the best style is the authoritative. And I always want to emphasize the tiv because people tend to confuse that with the Tyrian. So authoritative is the sweet spot with a good amount of boundaries and demands good of the child, but also then a good amount of responsiveness and curiosity leaning in from the parent. This is where we like. And on that other end of the spectrum, we have authoritarian, which is the very old school, high demands, low from the kid, but low responsiveness from the parent. Again, not the best, but still a style. So those are the classic ways of thinking about things. Now let's talk about the new agey stuff. You know, we hear gentle parenting
all the time,
conscious parenting, and everyone likes to really talk down about gentle parenting. I see even in physician groups, like people talk down on gentle parenting as if it's permissive. So I'll let you weigh in on that, but that's what I see when people talk about gentle, like, oh, we need to bring back the, you know, whatever.
Yeah, that's where I think that's what happens is it feels like authoritarian. It's sort of like, you know, centrist or right-leaning politics or left-leaning. It's kind of like that, like where things go a little too far out of the center. Then you've got this like ricochet effect where they're like, oh my God, that's like ridiculous that there's no consequences, so I'm going to go that extreme and go FAFO. So gentle parenting in a nutshell, it's not exactly the same thing as authoritative, though they do share core values like warmth, respect, connection, but it's kind of a subset or a little bit like in a little bit toward, you know, kind of outside the realms. But the main difference is that it's with the consequence. That's kind of it in a nutshell. It's with the consequences and the age appropriate boundaries, where the gentle parenting is really doesn't really like to see those like punitive punishment consequences, because there's this thought that like that might be damaging. Again, the research does not show that. You know, the research shows that like everything, if it's in an age appropriate way, if it's not physical, if it's, you know, like you do, really the middle approach is ideal. But the idea with gentle is you want like the parents or the people that really buy into this philosophy think natural consequences will teach the child. So let's say, just off the top of my head, siblings are fighting, you know, as they do. They're fighting, they're arguing, it goes a little too far, you know. Instead of one child that sort of took it too far and maybe hit or something like that, we're not going to put that kid in a timeout, or we're not going to take away privileges like the TV or whatever. We're not going to punish them, but we're going to, you know, really just talk about the feelings and what happened and this and process. And then because we think, oh, well, then if they understand that or whatever, then naturally they're not going to want it. They're going to see that damages the relationship. And so you're not really like, you know, taking away or consequences in that. Whereas maybe the authoritative would have more of that clear boundaries. No, we have a clear boundary. If we hit, this happens. Or if we do this, like this is the consequence, you know? So that's kind of, but also it's a lot of emphasis on the warmth and the compassion and the speaking through emotions and that kind of thing. And that's where I think that kind of the controversy comes in, because some parents, depending on how you were raised or what your philosophy is, it feels like it's too heavy on that. And so that's kind of what, but it's not.
Or maybe it starts to lean a little bit into the permissive end, or at least the way, like I see a lot of the gentle parenting sometimes by the influencers, and it seems to not have any elements of authoritative in it, but, you know, veering all the way out into permissiveness, because a lot of people, again, it's terms being thrown around and people not being clear about what their objectives are and what they're trying to accomplish. So I feel like that's where a lot of the confusion comes in, where the people who lean towards the authoritarian philosophy tend to think that when you say gentle, you mean permissive, when it really isn't. It really, you know, gentle when practiced well sounds like it should be closer to authoritative, but without the consequence piece of it. Sort of, or allowing, and it's not an absence of consequence, really. It's really just allowing for natural consequences. So let's say you don't take care of your stuff. Instead of me giving you consequence for it, I just let it, you know, you lose it. And then the natural consequence is that
your sibling, your sister or brother is upset with you, and you have to sit with that, and you know, but for depending on the child, I could see how that could be confusing, you know, and also I could see it from the other end, because Natural consequences are really important. It's how we learn. Like in the
Right.
real world,
Right.
often you tell your kid, no, you can't do this, no, you can't do that, or
Mhm.
even you do try to do a consequence or take away something or punish, and it doesn't work. And I
Right.
think that's where kind of the gap was for authoritative, was that, oh, even though I'm setting boundaries in that and delivering consequences, my kid's still not getting it. And I think that's where that's where this whole philosophy came in, is like, maybe we need to spend more time focusing on processing the emotion and, figuring out kind of the why. But yeah.
Allowing the kid to fall if they're not going to break something, so that they learn that when they climb that place, they fall, which is sometimes a lot more effective.
Yeah, I mean,
actual consequence versus.
Look, my eldest, we would tell my eldest time and time again, don't throw sand, don't throw rocks, like when he was younger. Don't do it. If you do it, this is going to happen, whatever. Like trying to do the authoritative. And it just wasn't, he would just, no matter what, just do it. And sure enough, one day he threw a rock up in the air, and gravity does its thing, and it landed right on his head. It didn't hurt anyone else. He was alone in the backyard. Big gash. I mean, we thought we needed stitches. And did he ever throw a rock to this day, years later? No. And so that's like natural consequence. But, so that's like an example of sometimes you put these punishments and that doesn't work. And then the natural consequence is the thing that finally makes it click in your kid's head, But so, I mean, I think that there's I would say to parents sometimes, because all this is so much and we're bombarded with this stuff so much all day, every day, is you've got to trust your gut and instinct. And your child, first of all, is unique. Your family's unique. You're unique. You've got to tap into that gut of like what feels right, where kind of on that center, are you a little here, are you a little here? And then how things evolve, because we're chasing a moving target. Your kid is growing. Every stage is very different.
That's true.
It generally in the middle is sort of the place where you want to be. I wouldn't recommend any extreme. I wouldn't recommend the FAFO, and I wouldn't recommend totally permissive. It's just confusing. They need these guardrails, and they have friends. They need a parent. Just kind of like the logic.
And we know the structure helps children feel safe. I mean, I think a lot of the studies support that, having structures, boundaries, how far to go, not to go, helps children feel ultimately safe.
Absolutely.
We do need some of that, somewhere in the middle in the spectrum, regardless where you lean. And I think one thing I always also try to remind myself and tell other parents is, as long as you're doing your best, you will make mistakes.
Absolutely.
Forgive yourself.
Allow you have to have grace.
Mistakes. Acknowledge it to the kid, to
Yeah.
yourself, and to the kid as well. Apologize when you need to, when you mess up, and know that you're human and doing
that's it. The repair, because there will be rupture. The repair is what it's all about. When you have messed up, or when you have been too strong, whatever, when you've had a moment where you're not crushing parenting, which it just happens multiple times every day for every parent, you have to give yourself grace. If you're getting it right 60, 70, that's what the research shows. If you're getting right 60, 70% of the time, you're winning. So it's not, no one is doing it 100% all the time. So don't put that on yourself. Admit to when you don't get it right. And, that's also demonstrating a lot of empathy and compassion, and your child will.
From the adult. And I will definitely say I run into lots and lots of moms who have this idea that there's these moms out there who are like getting it 100% right 100% of the time, and so they feel like failures when they feel like they've missed the mark in whatever ways. And I spend a lot of time just saying, listen, we're all doing the best that we can.
Absolutely.
But they're like, but I see them and they're so perfect, and they And these are influencers. We all are on our best behavior.
It's not real.
It's not real. If you're seeing it in social, it's acting. It's not real. If you're seeing it in your community, like, oh, these are the moms at the school, and they just look so perfect, and they're chilling. And I said, you know what goes on behind closed doors? We all lose it. Every one of us, even those of us who are very well trained and know what to do, we all lose it. We know what we have to do. And it's part of our humanity, and there is no perfection here. We just have to say, acknowledge I've messed up. I didn't hit the mark. Repair, apologize.
Exactly. And then move on. Then you got to move on. Yeah.
All right. We This has been fun.
I think we're going to move on. We have to move on.
So this has been fun, and we thank everyone who is able to join us or who watches us later. Again, you can leave us your comments, thoughts, feedback. If there's something you've been curious about that you'd like an adult psychiatrist or not an adult psychiatrist to weigh in on, please leave us comments below. But it's been a pleasure chatting again with you this afternoon, Z.
Yes, leave us your questions, your burning questions. We'll do our best to answer. It's really fun engaging with you, the audience. And that's what we're here for.
Awesome. We're going to check out Dr. Blanley Akinrami again with
Dr. Al Daher.
Pleasure chatting. Have a wonderful day.
Have a good Halloween.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.